Hello, my name is Amanda and welcome to Novis. This channel is dedicated to analyzing and exploring many topics, including true crime, conspiracy theories, abnormal psychology, controversial people, weird science or history, and anything else that can be considered strange. As this channel is brand new, it may take me some time to get into the swing of creating, editing, and releasing videos, so I don't yet have an upload schedule. However, if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be working very hard to get quality content out to you as quickly as possible, so ring that notification bell and check back often for new videos. I would love to devote more time to making this content if possible, so share this video with anyone you think may find it interesting. Additionally, if you have any suggestions or requests for video topics, please feel free to leave them in the comments below or fill out the suggestion form that's located in the description box. I absolutely love learning about and deep diving into all kinds of topics, and I would love to be able to share what I find with you. Warning: due to the graphic nature of the topics I will be discussing, some words or phrases will be censored. If you feel as though you may not be able to handle the discussion of topics such as murder, arson, or sexual assault, please click off of the video now. Viewer discretion is advised. I originally learned of this case while watching reruns of Unsolved Mysteries, as I usually do. I am aware that the reliability of this site isn't always the best, but according to Wikipedia, this case was featured in Season 2, Episode 26, which originally aired in 1990, and it can be found on YouTube if anybody is interested in watching it. However, the video on YouTube says that this was Season 2, Episode 19, so I'm not 100% sure which to go off of. I will leave a link to the video I watched below, as well as the links to the other resources I used to research this topic. Either way, this case is very fascinating and I really want to discuss it with you, so let's jump right in. Edgewater Hospital in Chicago, Illinois has seen its fair share of fame. It was opened in 1929 by Dr. Maurice Maisel and was a state-of-the-art luxury hospital. Over the years, it has boasted a solarium, a rooftop deck, a swimming pool, a hyperbaric chamber, and even a helipad. The patient rooms were pretty basic when it first opened its doors. It was 1929 after all. But as society advanced, Maisel ensured that the hospital had cutting-edge technology for both medical and entertainment purposes. Whenever he could, he would add more advanced medical equipment to operating theaters and procedure rooms, as well as adding TVs into all of the patient rooms in the 1950s. Maisel would continue overseeing hospital operations up until his death in 1980. In its heyday, the one and only Frank Sinatra frequently stayed at Edgewater during his time in Chicago, treating it more like a hotel than a hospital, as it was known for its white glove service. The lobby was even set up to look like a hotel lobby to patients as they entered. Marilyn Monroe was also known to stay there from time to time. Finally, Edgewater was the birthplace of both presidential candidate and First Lady Hillary Clinton, as well as the infamous serial-killing clown John Wayne Gacy. However, in 1977, it became the backdrop to a confounding series of events, which has been called one of the most bizarre murder cases in Chicago history by some. Teresita Basa was born in 1929 in Dumaguete on Negros Island in the Philippines. Teresita was the only child of a wealthy lawyer and his wife. She graduated from Assumption College in Manila and then immigrated to the United States in the mid-1960s, where she earned her master's degree in music from Indiana University. She then went on to study inhalation therapy and eventually settled in Chicago, Illinois, where she became a respiratory therapist at Edgewater Hospital. She was known to be very passionate about her job and would strive to provide her patients with the best care she could give. Coworkers described her as a reserved and polite woman who was dedicated to both her work and her education. At the time of her death, Teresita was preparing a doctor's thesis in music at Loyola University. In her limited free time, she would also give piano lessons to local children and was working on writing her first book. She did not drink or take drugs and was said to live a relatively routine and quiet life. On February 21, 1977, a friend of Teresita named Ruth Loeb would call sometime around 7:30 p.m. and speak to Teresita for 20 to 30 minutes. Teresita told her friend that another male friend would be stopping by soon, but gave no more information on who the man was or why he was coming over. Teresita was known to entertain friends at her apartment from time to time. She had a steady boyfriend, but was reportedly still a virgin at the age of 47. This fact would become important later in the case. About an hour after Ruth had spoken to Teresita, the fire department would be called to the apartment building in which Teresita lived after neighbors reported smelling smoke. After arriving on scene, the fire department witnessed smoke billowing out from under the front door of Teresita's 15th floor apartment. They busted into the apartment, and upon entering, they saw a pile of clothes and a mattress on the floor in the middle of the living room. Both were on fire, and thick black smoke was erupting from them. After extinguishing the flames, firefighters noticed that around them lay belongings strewn across the floor. Cabinets and drawers were open, and the contents pulled out. No residents were found during their quick sweep of the one-bedroom apartment. Firefighters needed to make sure that the fire would not restart from a hidden incendiary device, so they began carefully lifting the clothes and the mattress off the pile. Underneath, they were horrified to find the naked body of a woman lying on her back, her legs slightly spread. Even more disturbingly, the wooden handle of a large butcher knife was sticking straight out from the center of her chest. They stumbled upon the scene of a seemingly obvious homicide, so investigators from the local police department were called to investigate immediately. Although the fire had been hot, reports state that other than the area immediately around the mattress, the rest of the apartment had barely been affected by the flames. The body they found was quickly identified as Teresita Basa. At first glance, investigators believed that the crime was a run-of-the-mill rape-murder case. However, the medical examiner would determine that Teresita had, in fact, not been raped. Police found a note that read, "Get tickets for AS" in the apartment, and determined that it had been written by Basa herself. Over the next few weeks and months, investigators Joe Stachula and Lee Eplin, who were assigned the case, would interview Teresita's neighbors, friends, and acquaintances. Unfortunately, they were unable to identify the mysterious AS from her note, and the case swiftly ground to a halt. Her boyfriend was investigated, as most significant others generally are in cases like this, but he was quickly cleared of suspicion. It appeared that the case would remain unsolved for the foreseeable future, and it stayed that way for months. That is, until a witness came forward with an unbelievable story. A doctor named Jose Chua came forward and claimed that after the murder, his wife, Remy, who also worked at the hospital, began seeing the apparition of Teresita in the employee lounge at Edgewater. Remy swore that this was not a dream, but decided to keep this experience to herself so as to not sound foolish. Remy was not the only employee who would claim to see the spirit wandering around the lounge, though. In fact, it was common for employees to take short naps in the lounge between patients or shifts, and many had claimed to have woken mid-nap to see a ghostly figure walking through. Then, in August of 1977, she began suffering from strange trance-like episodes in which she would say things and do things that she could not remember. He went on to explain that during these episodes, Remy would tell him information about Teresita's murder that she should not have known. He claimed that during the episodes, his wife was possessed and spoke with a voice that was not her own. At one point, during an episode, Remy even blurted out, "I am Teresita Basa." Dr. Chua had never heard of Teresita or her murder until his wife began divulging information about the crime to him during these episodes. Through Remy, Teresita would tell him that a man named Alan Showery had stabbed her to death, rummaged through her belongings, and then set her and her apartment on fire to cover his tracks. When the doctor asked the voice why she had allowed Alan Showery into her home to begin with, it responded he was a friend. Even after hearing this, Dr. Chua and his wife were apprehensive about going to the police. For obvious reasons, they believed that the police would not take these claims seriously and the couple would appear foolish or unstable. However, the voice returned again and again, giving the couple more information and eventually pleaded with them to go to the police. When the doctor told the voice that the police would need evidence, the voice replied by telling him that Showery had stolen jewelry from her apartment and gave it to his girlfriend. Though the police thought the perpetrator may have taken valuables based on how the apartment had been ransacked, they were unable to identify any missing items at the time of the incident. The voice also gave Dr. Chua the names and contact information of Teresita's family members who could identify the stolen jewelry if it was indeed found at Alan Showery's home. After some consideration, Dr. Chua decided he had to go to the police with this new information, and would just have to hope that they believed his story. As the doctor and his wife had feared, the police were suspicious of the claim. It was, after all, an incredible series of events. However, just as the voice had told Dr. Chua, the police were intrigued when he told them about the jewelry that was stolen. Upon re-questioning other employees at the hospital, some claimed that they did remember Showery saying he was going to fix Teresita's TV around the same time that the murder occurred. Police wanted to speak to this man as soon as possible. They quickly obtained Showery's address and proceeded to his apartment on August 11, 1977. Investigators asked to speak to Showery, and he agreed to accompany them to the station. When they began questioning him, Showery denied going to Teresita's house at all. However, when they confronted him with the information about his coworkers overhearing him talk about fixing Teresita's TV, his story changed. He began trying to tell police that he had in fact been there. However, he forgot to bring the tool he needed to fix the TV, so he immediately went home and began helping his girlfriend with their electricity, which had not been working at the exact same time. The investigators spoke to Showery's girlfriend, who was wearing a pearl cocktail ring that was incredibly similar to one that the voice of Teresita had described to the doctor. Showery's girlfriend told police that the pearl ring, as well as a jade necklace, were given to her by Showery as belated Christmas presents in February, shortly after the crime was committed. Both of these items would be identified as belonging to Teresita by her family, just as the voice had told Dr. Chua. On top of that, Showery's girlfriend stated that she didn't know that their apartment had ever had electrical issues at all. Furthermore, she stated even if the electricity wasn't working, Showery wouldn't know how to fix it anyway. When presented with the information given by the ghost and his girlfriend, Showery confessed to the murder, claiming that he had gone to Teresita's home that day to rob her for rent money under the guise of helping her fix her TV. When Teresita turned her back on Showery, he began beating her. After she had passed, Showery stripped her clothes off to stage the scene as if it was a sexually motivated attack. Finally, he stabbed her in the chest with one of her own kitchen knives to make sure that she was dead. She had been known to hire him occasionally and reportedly paid him well for his work in the past. He used this knowledge that Teresita was kind and generous to try and make a quick buck. But after murdering his friend, all Showery got from it was $30 and a few pieces of jewelry. During his trial, Showery would claim that he was just joking when he had made his confession and claimed that he had been coerced by detectives during his interview. His defense team argued that Remy had made up the visions because she had been fired from Edgewater Hospital, where she had briefly worked with Showery. The jury was unable to reach a decision in this case, and a mistrial was declared. Another trial was scheduled for February 1979. However, back in his jail cell, Showery once again had a change of heart and decided to plead guilty to the murder, the robbery, and the arson. Some claim that the spirit of Teresita visited Showery in his cell and convinced him to change his plea. However, it was more likely that his defense team told him he should change his plea for a more lenient sentence, as a hung jury was not the slam dunk, not guilty verdict they had been hoping for. Whatever the reason, Showery pled guilty and was sentenced to 14 years in prison for the murder and 4 years each for both robbery and the arson. Showery served his time at Stateville Correctional Center but was paroled in July 1983 after serving just under 5 years of his sentence. To this day, police are not quite sure how Remy knew what she did about the crime. Some online sleuths have suggested that maybe she was fired from the hospital after Showery complained about the quality of her work. In return, Remy pretended to experience these episodes so that she could share information about the murder, which she had overheard Showery talking about while they were both working at Edgewater. However, this has never been verified. Other people truly believe that the spirit of Teresita Basa used Remy to give Dr. Chua information to help catch Showery. It has been theorized that Teresita's spirit may have selected Remy for this purpose because she was also an immigrant from the Philippines who spoke both English and Tagalog, came to America for a better opportunity, and wound up working as a respiratory therapist at Edgewater. Though they worked in the same unit, the two women rarely interacted as they worked different shifts and had very little knowledge about each other's lives. Whatever the case may be, the investigators on the case believe that Showery's confession to police is the truth. Teresita lost her life over a measly $30 and some jewelry, and Showery essentially got away with murder as he has served only a few years in prison. Today, Alan Showery would be in his 70s. His last known whereabouts were in New York City in 2004. His location and status after that is unknown. Teresita's body was flown back to her home in the Philippines. According to sources such as Find a Grave, Teresita was buried at Dumaguete Roman Catholic Cemetery. However, it seems that no such cemetery exists. Perhaps it has a different name that locals know it as, but as far as I can find online, a cemetery by that name does not appear to exist in Dumaguete. Edgewater Hospital closed its doors in 2001 after an elaborate insurance scam claimed the life of 2 patients who were put through unnecessary medical procedures so that the doctors involved could charge the insurance companies more, and thus make more money. Upwards of 1,000 patients were found to have been admitted to the facility when there was no medical necessity to do so. The chief executive officer at the time, Peter Rogan, hired a company to destroy boxes full of financial records and tried to cover his tracks, but was not successful in this attempt. In 2006, the FBI began raiding the abandoned buildings of other failed businesses that belonged to Rogan. He then fled to Canada to try and evade federal agents. Eventually, it was discovered that Rogan shredded 67 boxes full of financial documents and lied about his assets to authorities. While living in Vancouver, Canada, Rogan rented a $5,000 per month penthouse, but maintained that he did not have control over or access to various overseas bank accounts that the agents linked to him. One of these offshore accounts was located in the Bahamas and was called, quote, Peter Rogan Irrevocable Trust. Rogan was eventually sentenced to 21 months in October of 2015. After closing in 2001, the building stood vacant for 15 years. Old medical records were strewn about the nurses' stations or stacked in hallways, and the walls were covered in graffiti from urban explorers. More medical records, as well as tissue samples, autopsy records, and medical pictures were found just sitting in the lab, as if the technicians would return to their work at any moment. It seems that when the hospital closed, everything was just left where it lay. In 2016, parts of the hospital's campus were demolished, and new luxury apartments now fill the buildings that were saved. This process took more than 5 years to complete and was finished only a few years ago in 2020. Now called Anderson Point, the 155-unit complex is situated within the 2 oldest buildings that made up the original hospital. I will now move away from the reported facts of the case and briefly share my personal opinions on the subject. First, I am not religious. I grew up in a Baptist church, however I left organized religion entirely 14 years ago at this point. Although I don't consider myself to be religious, I would say that I am spiritual in some way. I don't necessarily believe in a specific God, however, I don't believe that death is necessarily the end. The reason for this comes from the scientific world. Like everything in the universe, life and human consciousness is just one form of energy and matter. According to the law of conservation, also known as the first law of thermodynamics, energy can be changed from one form to another, but it cannot be created or destroyed. The total amount of energy and matter in the universe remains constant, merely changing from one form to another. In a spiritual sense, I interpret this to mean that when we die, the energy and the matter that made us up as we were alive has to go somewhere. We just don't really know where that place is yet. Since we do not know where this energy goes, it's impossible to completely rule out things like hauntings, possessions, or residual energy hotspots. Going a little bit back to the case, in Filipino culture, like what Teresita would probably believe, the souls and spirits of those people who have passed on are very important to those that are still living. Though many Filipino people today predominantly practice Western Catholicism or Islam, many beliefs from the indigenous peoples of the past still persist. Because of this, some common Filipino beliefs seem very familiar to people in Western countries. However, some traditional indigenous beliefs that still persist are unique to the tribal region from where those people originate from. Ghosts of the dead are regarded as wise and ancestral spirits who help guide, protect, and warn their families and the wider community as a whole. However, if a spirit is disrespected, they can also cast harm on whoever is responsible for the disrespect. The souls of the departed exist in a spirit plane parallel to the one in which we live. This spirit world is full of different beings, both positive and negative, ranging from deities to human souls, dark trickster entities, and even minor spirits like those of trees or rocks. Finally, people from the Philippines generally believe that whatever happens in the spirit world can influence what happens in the physical world, and can change how we experience that. Perhaps due to her culture and the belief in the spirit realm, Remy was the easiest conduit for Teresita to speak through, even though they had only met each other a handful of times while Teresita was alive. Perhaps Remy and Dr. Chua were concerned that if they did not go to the police as Teresita's spirit had requested of them, her spirit may take this as disrespect and thus the couple would be targeted by Teresita for harm or negative experiences. With that being said, it's also entirely possible and probably more likely that Remy overheard Showery discussing his crime or the case while they were both at work. It was reported that the possession episodes began shortly after she left her position at the hospital. But there has to be some reason for her to come up with such an elaborate and strange story if she is in fact making it up. In my opinion, this reason may be that she was concerned that Showery would know it was her if the police came looking for him, so she did not originally come forward. However, months later, police still did not have any solid leads and she no longer worked at the hospital, so she didn't have to see Showery after she came forward. At this point, it had been months since the murder occurred, and perhaps she was scared police may not believe her, or may think that she was involved since she did not report what she knew immediately. With all that said, I think saying, "I was scared that a man I knew to be a murderer by his own admission would also murder me if I talked to the police, so I waited until I no longer worked with him to come speak to you," is slightly more believable than saying, "My coworker who was murdered possessed my body and told my husband who killed her and what jewelry he stole." Maybe that's just me. Either way, I think it's safe to say that Alan Showery was indeed guilty of committing this awful crime, as he stated in his guilty plea, and that he got off light with both his sentence and subsequent imprisonment. I believe that a person who is willing to murder not only just a stranger, but someone who was supposed to be a friend, and someone who had helped them whenever they needed it before in order to steal from them, and then strip them naked and set them and their house on fire, further risking the well-being of neighbors and first responders, should probably spend the rest of their life away from the general public, or at least more than 5 years. On top of that, if they do somehow end up released back into the population, their whereabouts and history should be knowledge available to the public so that they can protect themselves against such a criminal. Investigators to Chua who worked the Basa case has stated, "To this day, I'm not quite sure whether I believe how the information was obtained. Nonetheless, everything is completely true." Well, we have reached the end of this story, friends. This case is definitely one of the more intriguing ones I've heard of. I wish I could give you more concrete resolution, but this is just one of those cases where we may never know the entire truth. However, I am hopeful that what we are learning about the universe around us may help us better explain what happens to us when we leave this physical world behind. Thank you so much for making it to the end of my video. I truly appreciate it more than you'll ever know. Reading about this case was so fascinating, and I would love to make more videos like this. I have a few other ideas that I'm currently working on for upcoming videos, but any suggestions are greatly appreciated as I want to know what you guys would like to hear about. Again, please comment suggestions below or fill out the recommendation form I have linked in the description. If you liked this video and you want to see more, please like and subscribe, click the notification bell, and share with anyone who you think might find this video interesting. I will be linking my Patreon below, so if that's a way you are interested in supporting me, go check that out. I think I will eventually be adding some other videos exclusively to my Patreon page that would not be acceptable on the YouTube platform, as well as a private Discord server where you can interact with me and other viewers to discuss all kinds of topics. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to speak to you again in the next video. And just remember, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.